This is Wheel Bearings. I'm Dan Roth from Forbes.
I'm Dan. I'm not.
You are. You want to start again, or you want to leave it?
No, let's keep going. I'm Sam Abul Samad. I'm not Dan Roth, and I'm from Navigant Research.
And who should I be?
You're also Dan Roth. You cannot escape.
Oh, gosh. And I'm Sam Abul Samad from, I'm Rebecca Lindland from Rebecca Drives.
All right. Well, I'm glad that we're all punchy this evening. Clearly, none of us has caught the latest coronavirus or whatever. But you guys are back from the Chicago Auto Show. That was a great episode we did last week, remote in 3 parts. It was great. We had a nice normal sized show in 3 easy to assemble bites. So I enjoyed it. It was cool.
You didn't have to do any audio alignment, just had to drop them in.
Yeah.
Would you use Logic?
I use Audition.
Okay.
But it was nice. I recorded some bookends just for giggles, and off we went. Inside baseball aside, let's talk about what we're driving, because it's been a little while. You guys didn't talk about that last week because you were talking about what you were sitting in instead.
Yeah.
But Sam, you have the hang on. I was going to start with the media cars, but now I'm thinking.
Let's start with Rebecca.
Yeah, you went out to Illinois. I looked at the pictures you uploaded to Slack. I was like a detective. I was like, where is she? Where is that thing? I looked at so in the background of one of the pictures, there was a AAA truck, and I lifted the area code off the AAA truck to figure out where exactly you were. I was so intrigued. I was also dodging doing other stuff that I didn't want to do. But so you went out to Illinois and got a nice sort of time in like a high miles vehicle.
Dan, hold on a second. Dan, you could have just looked at the license plate on the...
I knew it was Illinois, but I didn't know it was, did they drive the thing from Illinois to Connecticut? Like, is that Greenwich I'm looking at? Didn't look like Greenwich. And so I was like, okay, so it must be Illinois. And then I was like, all right, there's an area code there. Okay, so that narrowed it down to basically the general area. And then I looked at the picture of the interior, and I saw like the college sticker on the back. I was like, oh, okay, and it's a university in Indiana. So I did my detective work.
You were busy.
It was like I was eating an apple. It was lunchtime. I was just killing some time.
I'll have to remember which pictures I upload next time.
Yes, be careful.
And I'm going to give a shameless plug. So my cousin Pam and her husband Jeff and their 4 amazing, wonderful kids, they live out in Wheaton, Illinois. And Pam actually has a really fantastic floral business out there where she does called Bloom Floral. And she does flower arrangements for all different kinds of events and such. And so, and her husband, Jeff, is a pastor in Elmhurst. And actually my college roommate lives out there as well. So what I typically do is after the Chicago Auto Show, then on that Friday, then I go out to Wheaton and spend the weekend and see people that I love, which is fun.
That's right. You were in Illinois anyway.
Right.
So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So historically, I usually will grab a press car from somebody, but the reality is that generally it is snowing there almost every day in February, and they have a what's it called when the a tandem driveway. I was thinking of the railroad, the shotgun houses, but it's a tandem driveway. And they have 3 cars. So adding a 4th car, we just end up juggling cars. So instead, I got an Uber or Lyft. I actually got a Lyft specifically and just didn't have a car. But Pam and Jeff both do a lot of really fantastic charity work, and they support a lot of people within the community and such. And so I actually had to pick up somebody to bring her to a commercial kitchen where she volunteers and works and such. And so in the process of doing that, I drove a 2008 Honda Odyssey with 198,000 miles on it. And what amazed me was just how good this thing still was. Like, I mean, and this thing has not been garaged. It's, it's been out in that beaten weather all these 12 years. And it was fun to drive an older vehicle like that, because keeping in mind that, the average vehicle is at 11 and a half years old. And this is what people are driving. It was such a great example. So of course, at first I didn't think it had any kind of backup camera at all, but it actually does. It has the one that's in the rear view mirror, like the little corner 2x2-inch one. Mm-hmm. Do you guys remember those?
So the display is embedded in the side of them, in the edge of the mirror.
Yes, which I discovered the second time that I backed up, because the first time.
Wait, not the interior rearview mirror?
Yes.
Back in the day, Dan, before they started putting screens everywhere in cars. On a lot of the early vehicles with backup cameras, they would just put a little like Rebecca said, like a little 2-inch square LCD embedded in the interior rearview mirror and project the view from the camera right on there.
Yeah, I think I vaguely recall that from like my first days of press cars, and it makes me curious why it was such a big deal when who was it that just released or just said like they've got the first backup camera that's integrated in there, and I don't know, I forget. It's probably just sort of like marketing PR nonsense that they recently
it pretty much was
changed something around, and like now it's this fancy camera display in your rearview mirror, and we're the first.
You're thinking of the camera view where you flip the rearview mirror, and then you can actually see the entire back. So like for towing, or if you've got storage in the back.
Yeah, I think
is that what you're talking about?
No, there was actually another recent announcement that I can't remember who it was, but just keep talking. It's not important.
It's not important. None of the things I say are important. Let's just keep moving. So with 200,000 miles on it, what's there? I think this is actually one of the things that is kind of interesting to our listeners, because they own vehicles that are, I'm sure a lot of them own vehicles that are this age or getting there. Normal people have cars that are up there in age and miles because they're so expensive, and they take a long enough to pay off that by the time you're done paying for them, you want to get all the use out of them. How's their experience like with ownership been? Has it been troublesome? Has it been, I'm not sure how much you've chatted about it, but.
Right. Not at all. They haven't had any issues with this vehicle. And, one of the reasons it has so many miles on it is because her family, my cousins, are in Pennsylvania, or in Eastern Pennsylvania, and then also New Jersey. And I'm pretty sure they've driven it down to Florida as well. On family vacations, because there's 6 of them. And so, and her family, my uncle used to have a place in Florida. So, these are both a combination of highway miles, but then an awful lot of local miles as well. I mean, Pam is also a voiceover actress, and so she may go into Chicago every now and then, but she really primarily is around town. And so there's a combination of these long drives, at certain times of the year, and then just hauling kids back and forth. All of her kids are athletes. All of them play sports in one way or the other. One goes to Taylor, as you mentioned, in Indiana, and the other 3 all went to Wheaton nearby. But
Wheaton. Wait. Which Wheaton? There's a Wheaton here.
Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois. The Christian school. Yeah.
Oh, that's not the Wheaton College that's here?
No.
I thought they were the same.
No, there's 2 Wheaton colleges.
I'm so confused.
You are learning so many things tonight, Dan. I'm so proud of you.
Look, I went to state schools. It was not.
That was the thing that struck me, as I said, was that this is a typical car that's on the road today. So this was clearly a very dolled up affair, because it did have that backup camera. It doesn't have any kind of remote start or anything like that. It's, it has the electric on the key fob. it has the power doors and remote unlock on the key fob. But the tailgate, and of course it has the stow and go, or not the stow and go. What is the magic seat that Honda calls it?
Right. The magic. So what does the magic seat do? It moves out, makes a hallway in the middle, right?
No. So the magic seat. So there's a big cavernous bit.
The third row.
Right. The third row tumbles into that.
I don't know
space.
I don't know if Honda used the magic seat term on that for the minivans. That magic seat was the fold up back seat and the fit. But yeah, you're right. This third row seat, just kind of flips back and into that bin, so you have a flat load floor back there, and that's actually the way the other minivans, the Toyota Sienna and the Chrysler minivans work now as well. So it's like the stow and go, basically the same concept as the stow and go. But I think Honda was actually the first to do this.
Right, they were. So I thought they still called it. I feel like when I was doing some research, I thought they still called it the magic seat, but magic slide is I think what they called it. But it's basically it folds mostly flat into the third row, and then it had those. It has the quick release doors that close automatically on the two sides. But it's not, I don't think you can close the doors electronically. And there's not like a button, like you have to pull the handle and then the door goes. So, it had, this was clearly an upper range model because it does have a lot of amenities in it. So
looking at these photos, it looks like, it's in pretty amazing shape for, a vehicle with 200,000 miles on it.
It is in amazing shape inside and out, and with 4 kids inside. It's impressive. 4 kids, 2 dogs at any given time. What that van has put up with is just phenomenal. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it, was because it was, and the way it drove, it was quiet. It was, the steering was maybe a little bit loose, but I actually ended up driving it to the airport, which was a good 30 miles. And, so really got a feel for it on the highway as well. The visibility was terrific in it, of course. But, again, it was impressive. It was just impressive for that many miles to be in that good condition and not garaged either. So Pam had told me, she's like, we really haven't had major issues with it. I will say that her husband is a little bit picky about his vehicles. And so I'm sure he's taken exceptional care of it. But it also shows how much life you can get out of a vehicle, even if you can't garage it, but just taking really good care of it. It has very little body wear on it. There's a couple of patches, a little rust on it. But again, we're talking about 12 Chicago winters.
Right, I thought cars just kind of melted.
It's incredible.
That's what those things, they just get devoured by salt around here. So
yeah, exactly. So kudos to Honda, because it's a remarkable vehicle.
And just to verify what you said, Honda does in fact refer to that third row as the magic seat.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yes. So you were right.
Yay! I love being right.
So, and it's, it was interesting because my brother and his wife bought one of those about the same year. And it hit like the 100,000 mile range. And there's an expensive service they need. Like the timing belt is expensive to do,
sure,
but like it's like wear items, and any car these days has something around that age that gets expensive. But a coworker has one that's like the same year, and every car has its different circumstances, so who knows what theirs has gone through. But she came in a couple of weeks ago, and it was like the check engine light was blinking, and she's like, "Is that bad?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's not good."
Yeah, that's never good.
Like when it's on, it's bad. When it's blinking, it's worse. Right. So let's check it. And a quick Google was like, oh yeah, that's something major. That's like a major misfire. And apparently sometimes the spark plugs like to come apart And so you get like the electrodes smashing around inside the cylinder. So I was like,
that's not good.
Yeah.
That's
and
not
it ran with like a very obvious skip. It didn't sound like, like hammering, like if there was something actually in one of the cylinders. I was like, you should have this flatbedded to the dealer so that they can diagnose it and it doesn't break on the way. Cause in my cowboy days, I've been like, we'll head out we'll aim for the dealer and see how far we get. That's not anything I would recommend for anybody else. And so
especially if you're hauling a bunch of kids around.
Yeah, exactly. If you have a minivan, you need kids, or you need a minivan because you got kids. And this is, she took it to the dealer and they called back. She's like, so they said I need like a new engine. I need rings because it was, pulling oil past the rings and fouling the plugs. It's like, oh, you could just have them replace the plugs. It'll be fine for a while. She's like, no, we have to fix it. Like, I need the car to work. So I'm assuming they rebuilt the engine, honed the cylinders and threw rings in it, and hopefully did the bearings in the lower end and stuff. But it was a surprise to me. Like, that's the first real instance I've seen of a modern car needing that kind of thing. And I think part of it is just the kind of use a minivan gets, but they're always hard miles. They're in town, they're stop and go. Yep. That's like the hardest miles a car can do.
Exactly.
And not everybody commits to fixing the car when it runs into that kind of thing. They usually just say like, well, we'll just get a new one, especially if it's at a dealer service department. They will happily refer you to the sales guys so they can sign you up for another 6 years of payments for a job that you could have put it on a credit card and paid it off in a couple of months. But we won't talk about reality. Sometimes you just want it to smell better. But it sounds like they haven't had that issue. It's not like not an endemic problem with the Odyssey.
No, it's definitely not. And they also have, what was their other? They also have an absolutely ancient Ford F-150, and they sold their like 1986 Toyota Camry for $1 to somebody this weekend as well. So I missed that transaction.
That's like one of that's
it may have been a
Camry.
90. No, I'm sorry. It may have been 1990 or something, but it was or 2000 rather, or 2000. It was old. Yeah. It was really old, and that one had all sorts of. They were having all sorts of issues with it, and somebody else was driving it. And then I honestly can't think of what her husband drives because I barely saw it. But so it was an array of typical vehicles that are on the road. That people are driving.
We have a family friend that also they currently have an Odyssey, a 2016, but before that they had like a 2002 or 3 Odyssey that they drove pretty much into the ground, and hauling around the kids and hauling around hockey gear and all kinds of other detritus over the years, and they had a great experience with that one too, and I think, what you described, Rebecca, sounds like, it's the ideal use case, for a minivan. When you've got a family to haul around, you got people to haul around, a minivan is just so much more useful and practical than an SUV,
Absolutely.
For this kind of case.
Well, and it can get you through so many life stages because it can get you through all the children's life stages. And then in their case, like her mom, my aunt, is 80. And so, getting in and out of that van was super easy. Yep. And, and then, with the seats moving and stuff, you can still put so much gear in. And in Pam's case, she started this floral business. So now they haul some stuff, in the floral business. And it's just, there's so many uses for a minivan, and they're really hard to beat in many ways, even though, man, I did feel matronly driving that thing.
Well, I drove vans when I was not even married, and I mean,
what?
like,
and you still got married?
They weren't my vans. I'm just saying, like, as part of my jobs, sometimes you wind up in the van, and they have their uses, and that's where the charm is. Yeah, look, I'm still amazed I got married. Not because I didn't want to, because she agreed.
No,
but the and the other thing with the minivan that's handy is if you're a voiceover artist, it can be a handy sound booth no matter where you go. Is she a member of SAG or AFTRA?
I believe she is, yes. And then she also has a children's book out. Yeah, she's a really talented lady.
You guys are all entrepreneurs.
Yeah, she's a pretty cool chick. So no, it was a lot of fun. A great weekend.
Are you ready now to get back in brand new, highly luxurious cars you don't own?
Well, so I'm in a Lexus GX 570 right now.
We talked about
we'll talk about that next time.
Speaking of cars from 2008.
Yeah. No, that's the LX. This is the GX.
Yeah, but the GX is no spring chicken either.
It is no spring chicken either. And fortunately, the floor mats are labeled GX, so I can remember which one I'm driving. But the other thing I'm doing next week is the Corvette Stingray drive.
Oh, I hate you.
I'm really excited about.
Where is that?
Can
you divulge? If you can't say,
yes, I have to think about it. It's in Las Vegas.
Oh, well, that'll be a good place for it.
The Las Vegas.
There's some good roads there once you get out of town up into the mountains.
You know what though? I feel like they're really short selling that car. They need to bring it up to like Palmer Motorsports Park or like Club Motorsports up here in New Hampshire this time of year. Just show off.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the roads are like and such. But I'm also very interested. When we think about all those screens, I'm interested to see how all those buttons play out.
Yeah, so my expectation, and we can revisit this when you come back.
Yes.
My expectation is that you're going to use it, and you'll at least say it's not as bad as you think. You may actually really like it. It might actually work really well.
Yeah, no, it might. I'll be interested. So I shall report back in due time.
Or you may just drive it and have so much fun driving that you forget the buttons are even there. It's probably more likely.
That is more likely because it is a convertible. So.
Oh,
well, even better.
Convertible. Jeez.
Oh, Dan, you're such a curmudgeon.
I am.
Oh my gosh.
Convertibles are the best.
The very first car I ever bought was a convertible.
The very first car I ever rolled was not a convertible, but it reminded me that it's good to have a roof there. So in case you roll over, it scarred me for life. It's like I would have been like.
But on the other hand, if you have a convertible, then you have a lower center of gravity because you don't have all that extra mass up there.
Yeah.
So you're less likely to roll.
Yeah. When you're 17, you can roll anything. Yeah. So, all right. Well, now let's talk about actual new cars. Or is there something?
No, it's not the convertible. I don't know where my head was. It's just the Corvette Stingray.
It's the Targa, though. It's still a Targa.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So make sure you take the Targa roof off, or So the Corvette, I was actually not to completely divert, but like I'm really interested in that car because it seems like they've done such a thorough job of engineering it. It's such a big change. Just, the way they talk about like how the back glass is extra thick. They had a real problem with noise, trying to get the noise down because you went from having the engine 3 or 4 feet away in front of you to right behind your ear. Yeah,
for sure.
So they had to do a lot of work to make, and not just keep it quiet, but get the right sounds in the interior because you still want to hear it roar through the intake and stuff like that. You really can't hear the exhaust on it much at all. So it's such an interesting car, and it's been cooking for so long, the mid-engine Corvette, and it really it's as much of a shift as the 84 Corvette was, the Dave Hill car.
No, absolutely. It's stunning. So we are going up to Spring Mountain, which I haven't been to before.
Oh, nice. That's a nice track.
Yeah. So which I prefer because I was on a track outside of Vegas with the Fiat 500 Abarth years ago. And I didn't love it, but I think part of it was they had put chicanes in it, very specific and points that were much more, it didn't have flow. Like it was a super technical track, but without the nice flow that you want from a technical track. And it just, I don't know, I was kind of dreading it, but no. So Spring Mountain, that'll be cool.
Well, hey, take lots of videos and stuff.
I'll keep you posted.
If you can. Yeah. You want to send you a GoPro? I'll send you a GoPro.
You know what? I have a GoPro, but it's really old.
Yeah, mine too. I'll dig it out though.
Yeah, I know, right? Maybe I'll order one. We'll see. I have a few days.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, you can write it off for taxes, right, for next year.
Exactly. Anything I can write off. All right. Anyway, so what do you guys drive?
Yeah, well, Sam's driving the high performance Edge, the Edge ST, which
no, Explorer ST.
Explorer ST. I'm sorry, Explorer ST. How is it?
It's powerful. It's got lots of power. And I mean, generally, I like the Explorer, the new Explorer. It's definitely much better than the old one. It's got better visibility. It's roomier. Since I initially did the launch drive in the Explorer last June out in Oregon, I've had the opportunity to drive the Palisade, the Hyundai Palisade, and the Kia Telluride, and those, I think from a packaging standpoint are actually probably a little bit better, and certainly I think the Palisade in particular, has probably some slightly nicer interior, maybe a little more upscale looking than the Explorer, but neither of the Hyundai Kia SUVs have they're both based on front wheel drive platforms. They don't have the kind of performance capability that the Explorer ST does. I wouldn't call this an all out performance SUV. I think I'm less convinced of the efficacy of putting the ST badge on this and on the Edge than some of the folks at Ford Performance have tried to convince me that they deserve it. But nonetheless, it's fairly quick. But being powered by a Ford EcoBoost V6, as is often the case, there's a lot more boost than there is eco. The week I had it, it was on the cold side. It was, in the mid 20s most of the week. And, this thing averaged about 14.5 miles per gallon.
Wait, is that the 2.7 or the?
No, this is the 3 liter. It's 400 horsepower. All wheel drive is standard on the ST. So, it's a bit of a pig when it comes to using fuel.
14? That's awful.
Yeah, it is. It's not good.
What were you doing with it? Like, was you just
10-year-old? I mean, that's 10-year-old mine.
just driving it around. I mean, I didn't even, I didn't even, thrash it very much. It was mostly just driving around town. A couple of highway trips. It was mostly around town driving. It wasn't a lot of highway driving on it. So that, that definitely, pushed it in that direction. But still, it's just not very fuel efficient to put it mildly.
Well, and
it's rated, the EPA rating is 18 city and 24 highway.
The thing is that's how you drove it is how people will drive it. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
Wow.
And in cold weather conditions, this is, you're probably going to get about 14 to 16 miles per gallon with this thing, I would think, unless you're being really gentle with it. And
that's bad.
Yeah, it's not good. And this is, like I said, when I first drove it, it's a nice engine, but it's not that big a step up from even the, certainly not from the 2.7 liter. Or no, let's see, they have, no, even the other V6 is also a 3 liter. But it's a less powerful version. It's 400 horsepower in the ST. It's 365 in the XLT or the Limited, and so it's not that big of a jump in power. It does have more tire and bigger brakes and things like that on the ST. But I mean, you're not going to be driving this thing like a sports car, and you're probably better off, I think, even going with the base 2.3 liter 4-cylinder, which has 315 horsepower and is going to be significantly more fuel efficient than this. And there's also the hybrid version, which is even more so.
The hybrid's the one to get. I mean, I think they've probably made the right decision giving it more engine and ST trim than really sort of tightening up the chassis, which I'm sure it rides and handles okay. More than fine. But the thing that's going to impress that buyer, I think, is like when you stomp on it, does the damn thing go? And I'm sure it does.
Oh, it definitely goes. But like I say, even the mid-level trims with the regular 3-liter, they go pretty well too. It's not that much quicker. That's the thing. It's not the difference in performance is not that noticeable because the other engine is so close to this that it doesn't seem like it's worth it. And especially when you consider that this thing cost just shy of $60,000.
Oh,
yeah. The sticker, including delivery, came to $59,520.
I'm sorry, that's a Lincoln. That's a Lincoln price.
I mean, for that, I would you're better off to buy the Aviator, and the Aviator's got a nicer interior.
Can you do they overlap at that point? I mean, I'm sure you can.
Yeah,
they're
pretty
for
they're pretty close. The other thing that annoyed me about this one, when I drove it last June, so the ST and the Platinum are the only Explorers that have the 10-inch touchscreen in the middle. And what Ford did was when they decided to put the 10-inch in there, they went the base models have an 8-inch screen, and they picked the 10-inch because they turned it 90 degrees and made it a portrait screen instead of a landscape screen, because you can fit a 10-inch screen in the same width as the 8-inch screen. So it fits in between the vents that are on the dashboard. And when they did that, they did some rearrangement of the Sync 3 interface, but they didn't do a very good job of it. It's not very complete. And when you're just using the built-in stuff, the built-in Sync 3 stuff, it works fine. But when you're using when you're using Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, now it just uses the top half of the screen for the CarPlay display, and then the rest, it's got a big box that says Android Auto preferences or Apple CarPlay preferences. So it's basically wasting more than half of that screen.
So they didn't recalibrate it.
No, they didn't reflow everything.
Wow.
And so it's not. I would not recommend going with that one. I say if you want an Explorer, I would go with the mid-level like the XLT or the Limited, and get the stick with the 8-inch screen instead of upgrading to the 10-inch, because you're not really getting anything extra for it.
So is this just more illustration of how, because this launch has not gone well. Like, this is part of the reason why Ford told
that's one way of saying it.
Joe Hinrich to take a hike. He made a classy exit, but this is one of the things that's dragging Ford down right now is the launch of the Explorer and the Aviator, but mostly the Explorer, right? The way that it's rolled out.
Yeah, because that's the high volume model.
Yeah. So it just seems like the sort of product plan or just the ideas behind it were not fully baked, or like
it certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
I mean, did they think nobody would notice, or that it wouldn't matter? With the screen?
I don't know. I think they're hoping that people mostly just stick with the standard Sync 3 stuff, which works better than the using CarPlay or Android Auto in this thing. I think next, probably, for 2021, or maybe, partway through 2021, it'll probably get an upgrade to Sync 4, which should be better, because that's actually designed to support portrait screens, among other things. And so, but that won't be backward compatible to the 2020 models, because it requires different hardware. And, as you've been talking, I pulled up the Lincoln Aviator. The mid-level Aviator Reserve model starts at $56,190, and it has the same powertrain in it, the same 400 horsepower V6.
I'm sure that they're two different frames of mind, right? The ST is dressed up differently. The Lincoln is clearly
Yeah, I mean, it's got a little sportier look to it.
Yeah.
And the Lincoln is more luxurious, but I think for that kind of money, I would probably go with the Lincoln. If I'm going to spend $60,000 on it, I would go with the Aviator.
Well, and also just what else in the market can you get for $60,000?
A lot.
Right. And that's
like 1.5 Palisades.
I mean, oh my gosh, right? And that's the thing is that people
or a Palisade and a Sonata.
You could get a 2008 Honda Odyssey and a down payment on a house.
I mean, people don't shop in isolation, and it just sounds. I feel like sometimes, and Ford is not the only one guilty of this, but I feel like they sometimes, just operate in isolation. I mean, not that they don't do their due diligence when it comes to pricing, but there's a lot out there for that kind of money. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. It's not that it's a bad vehicle overall, but it is kind of thirsty on fuel, and the infotainment just doesn't really work on that portrait screen.
Well, I'm sure that their expectations for the ST in particular are not high volume.
Actually, I don't know about that.
Really?
I think, like on the Edge, I think the ST is now like over 20% of sales.
Well, to be fair, the Edge ST storms down the highway like something German. I was so impressed with that thing. It's not a great handler either. It's a little clumsy, but man, it's got long legs.
Yeah.
And it was not thirsty to the tune of 14 miles to the gallon when I drove it. So, how does it drive? I feel like we didn't necessarily.
It drives really well. I mean, the ST is definitely a little stiffer than the mid-level trims, but it's not uncomfortable at all, and it's got really good driving dynamics because this is a new rear-wheel drive platform, and it's got a similar rear suspension architecture to what's on the Mustang. It's an integral link rear suspension system, so it's a multi-link setup. The front is struts, and that's another difference between the Explorer and the Aviator. The Explorer has a strut front suspension system. On the Aviator, they have a completely different setup with dual control arms, short long arm suspension system on the front. So it's actually even a little better. But nonetheless, this is still a really good package. And I think it generally has, better driving dynamics than what you're going to get on many of the comparable vehicles in this class, but it's not, I guess, I'm looking at the pricing, the Limited, which also has the 365 horsepower version of the V6, it starts at 48,000, and you can also get that one with the hybrid. And then, the ST starts at 55. And, the ST, you go from a chrome grille and chrome trim to blacked out trim and grille. So it does have a little more aggressive look to it, but it's just not that much more. So it just doesn't seem to me, if I was buying an Explorer, I would go with a Limited rather than the ST.
Well, yeah, and you're never going to feel that. Even the what is it, 35 horsepower difference?
Yeah.
Like driving back to back, maybe you'll feel it, but in practice, you're not going to notice that. It's not that much.
You're not. So, but from there, I also had the new Escape for a week, which was I think I would actually go with, if I was in the market, I would probably actually go with the Escape, because I don't need a vehicle as big as the Explorer. Now, obviously, some people need a 3-row SUV, but the Escape, I think, is actually is more my style. I like that smaller size. It's more nimble feeling. It's certainly a lot lighter than the Explorer. Now, the one I had was a platinum, a titanium.
Yeah.
And, it was pretty much loaded, had a really nice, color on it. It was what they call dark Persian green. It's a really kind of a dark bluish green, color to it, which is a really cool looking color. And it had the 2-liter, EcoBoost, which, in my time with it, I averaged about 27.5 miles per gallon, which is much better.
Yeah, that's a little better.
And yeah, and this is also all-wheel drive. And it had auto stop start, which the Explorer also had. But I think the thing about the Escape, is compared to, it always comes down now for me to comparing, everything else against the comparable Mazda. And when I compare the Escape to the CX-5, we've complained in the past about the pricing on the CX-5. This Escape was $39,775. And while the interior is way better than the last generation Escape, it's not as good as the Mazda. There are hard plastic surfaces that are within reach. It's nicer than before. It's certainly much better laid out than before. One of the things I do like about the new Escape is they did lower the belt line. The visibility out of this thing is much better than the previous generation. I think the driving dynamics overall are a lot better. But if you're going to go with the titanium, it's going to be pricey, just like the Explorer is pricey. I mean, you can certainly get an Escape for a lot less money. You can get them starting in the mid-20s. But if you want the high-end Escape, it's going to cost you.
Well, I think we can all agree, too, that Mazda has done a fantastic job on their interiors. And I think it's one of the places that GM and Ford continue to struggle with is just, some of the interiors just are not as good as the competition.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I totally agree.
I liked driving the Escape, and I think it looks really nice on the exterior in particular, and it feels like the Focus that it's based on, so it drives pretty well. And I get what you're saying. Like, if you're in the market, you'd buy the Escape, but I think if you're in the Ford market, that's what you would buy. But if you're in the market for that class of vehicle,
yeah,
I think that there's, as good as the Escape is, man, the competition is right there with them. And even the RAV4 is really, really good in that class.
Absolutely.
And the hybrid, I love the hybrid version of it. But again, we're talking about competition. There's so much competition in that space.
Yeah, and it's expensive too. Like, that's the problem I'm having with all the recent Fords, is that they're just they're pricey.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
And while Ford is certainly had launch challenges with the Explorer, with just trying to get them out of the factory, in a condition that is acceptable for delivery to customers. I suspect that the pricing has also been a challenge for a lot of customers. They're starting to get kind of unaffordable, and that's not good.
Yeah. I mean, for 60 grand, you could drive what I drove.
Well,
which was
before we get into that, I just want to touch on one more car that I had since we last talked about
that's right.
we were driving, and just briefly, and that's the Mazda 3. But I had a Mazda 3 with the 6-speed manual transmission.
Oh, how was it? Was it everything everything we hoped it would be?
Fun.
It was excellent. It was absolutely outstanding. I love the Mazda 3. I love everything about the Mazda 3 except the visibility out of it, which, it's they've gone the opposite way that Ford did with the Escape, which, higher belt line, the hatchback, it is definitely harder to see out of.
Oh, the hatch has those it has those 90s Alpha pillars.
That's
it looks great.
Yeah. I had the same issue with the Mazda 3. It was the sedan, but looking out of the front windscreen, that was the one that I had really severe glare from the sun. It was
like the
really
reflection?
bad. Right. It just was, I don't know. It was just the angle of and it was something that I tried a couple of times, and it was every day it was like that. I don't know. It was very, very, it was distressing because I felt like I didn't have good visibility.
Yeah. I didn't notice that, and it may have had something to do with our relative seating positions. I don't know.
Sure. No, for sure.
But, I think the weather when I drove the Mazda, I think was more overcast. And so maybe it was, I didn't notice it as much. But I didn't notice that. I didn't have that problem when I drove the all-wheel drive Mazda 3 a few months ago.
I bring it up just because the general issue of visibility, whether it's out the front or the back, is, and as you say, those belt lines, like the Ford Escape, the belt line has been lowered for better visibility. And so it's just something that, I think it's something that we've talked about a few times now.
Yeah, it's certainly something I'd like to see manufacturers address more, start moving back in that direction of lower belt lines. But aside from that, the manual transmission in the Mazda 3 was just a joy to use. It was a lot of fun to drive. And with that 185 horsepower, 2.5 liter that's in there, it's got plenty of performance. It's a fun car.
I mean, that's, what else can we say?
No, that's awesome. I saw somebody driving a manual. It was a older BMW Z3 this morning. I was like, "You go, girl!" It was awesome.
Well, the nice thing as well is that Mazda is not restricting the manual transmission to just the entry level models. I mean, you can actually get it in higher trim levels than the Mazda 3.
For sure.
And I mean, this one was pretty well kitted out. It had leather interior and everything. And it was just a great place to spend time.
That sounds like the class of the segment that you can get it with a manual, because I don't think that everything else in that segment, especially not in a higher trim level, you can get with a manual.
No, absolutely. It's one of the few that you still can get with a manual.
And yeah, I mean, the Golf is going to go away except for the GTI, so that's going to be one less choice. So yeah, thank you, Mazda.
Yes.
Now we just have to keep buying them. That's the challenge. We love them, but we don't actually buy them.
So what were you driving, Dan?
I had, for $60,000, I had the Jeep Gladiator Rubicon, which is that's a big truck price for a mid-sized truck, and I was really charmed by it in some ways. Because it is all that it's cracked up to be. It's all that we anticipated it would be. I think FCA made the absolute right call to make it a crew cab. So there's a 4-door. Certainly the Wrangler Unlimited outsells the good old 2-door Wrangler by a lot. And they knew smartly that, you can just look at the Ram side of the business and see that pickup trucks are doing the same thing. Everybody's buying the crew cab pickups. And so they added, I think, 31 inches to the frame and stretched the wheelbase by 19 and a half inches, something like that. So it's long, but it doesn't drive quite as long. You've both driven this. It doesn't drive as long as it is. So that was a pleasant surprise. And that longer wheelbase sort of settles it down on the highway, which is completely not its element. And it, as a Rubicon, it has a little bit of wander on the highway. It doesn't really want to go over 70 miles an hour, which is fine because it eats fuel when you do that. And those big tires, it's not like there's any slack in the steering and stuff. They're just squishy, so you gotta keep a little hand on the wheel on the highway. But in broken pavement or, off-road, it's really, it's Jeep, it's in its element. The breakover and I think the breakover angle is really the only one that suffers. Approach and departure, I don't think are much different. So if you're actually off-roading it, it's really capable. It's a little longer and it can't go over, quite as much as the shorter one. So you probably get stuck when you get too brave. But I was also impressed by how refined it is. The JL is they've taken the Wrangler and they've made it about as refined as you possibly can. It's smooth. It's really well behaved. It's actually pretty quiet. I think it was you, Rebecca, that said that you were impressed with how quiet the last Jeep was. So
it's crazy.
Yeah, certainly, again, on the highway, the Rubicon with the tires, it makes a little noise, and there's some wind noise, but there's really not as much wind rush around that flat windshield as you would expect.
As you would expect.
Yeah,
because I had the
wait till they take
roof.
the doors off.
Oh yeah, well yeah. See, Jeeps and the Gladiator in particular, like you get all it just looks like this weird kind of lobster when when you have all that stuff off of it. It's just this weird exoskeleton. It's strange. But yeah, this had the hard top, so it was it was quiet, and it was a good place to spend time. And it was really charming, where it had a spray and bed liner, and I think it had a cargo management system. The rails. I don't know if that's standard or if that was an option. But I really loved the way I could just reach over the side and get stuff in and out of the bed, like trucks used to be. Instead of like the size of the first floor of my house, where I need to stand on the tire and yank myself up into the bed to get stuff. So it's nice that it's that tidy size, and it's a little narrower than some of the other trucks in the market. So, or at least it feels narrower. So it's cozy, and you look out over the hood and fenders like you do with an older truck. So it has all that charm, and I think that's why it was charming. There's Easter eggs all over the design, so you can get your surprise and delight going. It's very expensive as a Rubicon. I think it starts at like 33 for the sort of base model or the S or something like that. And that's really like, it's got all those charms still in that trim. And it's like $33K is not cheap. So that's still expensive. And I know that there's up to, I think like up to $9,000 on the hood of these now, because apparently they're not selling like they had thought they would. So that's a surprise, because I think they've really done everything right. It's very clever. It's very thoughtful. It's the most thoughtful midsize truck I think there is, because of what it is. But it's useful
and the most expensive.
Yeah, that's true. It is the most expensive. I certainly found that it was pricey. I got decent fuel economy with it, so I was impressed with that. The 8-speed transmission, or I think it's an 8-speed.
Yeah.
Like the powertrain's really well behaved, and it did. I posted to the Twitter account. It sounds like a theremin in reverse, which I was amused by. Yeah, I can't say that I would suggest it for like a hardcore. Like if you need a truck, it's just a lot of outlay for a work vehicle, but it has its charms. But Jeep has become this premium thing. Like back in the day when the original namesake Gladiator, they were different. They were work vehicles, and they were primitive. And this is about as far from primitive as you're going to get. It's maybe sort of like a primitive layout, but it doesn't drive primitive. It drives really, really pretty well refined. So,
well, I think what we had talked about before when I had the 4-door Wrangler was just that a vehicle that is so unbelievably capable off-road can be so well behaved on-road. Yeah,
I'll agree with that. I was pretty impressed by it, and sort of just it's I guess we'll use the term because it's misapplied everywhere else, but the bandwidth. it can do a lot, and it does it.
It's got a lot of dynamic range.
Yeah, there we go. It does a lot well. And you pay for it, but that's okay. That's sort of the Jeep theme. If you want.
I think I think you do pay for it, but I think in the past, it was really going to be tough to have a Jeep Wrangler as a daily driver. It just wasn't comfortable enough for that. And I think this is the first one that, legitimately it's a daily driver. I mean, my brother has the JK, and that's pretty comfortable, but I wouldn't necessarily want to drive it around all the time. I think that with this one, I do. Like, I didn't want that thing to go away. I would have kept it.
I was okay waving goodbye to it. The Rubicon is a little high. It's just,
Yeah, I know, that's true. And you had the Glad, right? You had the Gladiator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Wrangler itself, just the 4-door that I had, it was fun to put that top down, just to the one touch cloth top. I mean, that was great. It was just, it's so versatile.
Oh yeah. It has those charms, for sure. And then by the end of the week, I'm apparently not a Wrangler person.
You are such a curmudgeon.
No, I mean, I like them. I like them, but it's, I always feel like I'm giving them sort of short shrift because I don't get a chance to get them off road.
No, I know.
Like that's where they shine. So I always say like, they get tiresome because what I wind up doing is daily driving, commuting in them, and like that's not what they're for. Although that's what people do. The people who do it are committed enough. They want to do it. I'm old and curmudgeonly. I want luxury. I want quiet.
I'm pretty sure you're the youngest one on this podcast, by the way. Just FYI.
Yeah.
He's old at heart.
I am.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen,
and old.
Dan was born old at heart.
I was. I'm growing into soul. I'm growing into my personality. So yeah, but the Gladiator, we waited for so long for this, and I think they made absolutely the right call to make it a 4-door. I think that they did a ton of work, and it could not have been executed any better. So good for them. It's really charming, and I think they nailed what the buyer's going to want.
One thing that's curious is that last week in Chicago they unveiled the Gladiator Mojave, which is the first Jeep. They've had trail rated badges for Jeeps before, for the ones with the true off-road capability, with the 4-wheel drive, low range and locking rear diffs, things like that. But the Gladiator is the first one that's designed for high-speed off-road driving. I think they're going to be bringing that Mojave badge and the desert rated badge to other Jeeps, particularly the Wrangler, at least. I thought it was curious that they decided to do it on the Gladiator first before the Wrangler.
Well, I think it brings it in line with, the Raptor. It makes it compete with the Raptor. And there's not really, a Ranger Raptor is not really whatever.
Well, and globally overseas, there's really some fantastic, fun Toyota pickup trucks that people use in the desert. And so
the Toyota Hilux.
Yeah, exactly. So it could compete nicely with those kinds of things on a global basis.
Yeah. So I think it's a smart move, but the Jeep party can't go on forever either. So I'm really curious to see that it's not selling as briskly as they thought it would, because there was such pent up demand. Or there was such apparent pent up demand, but maybe they finally hit the end of the road with that. I don't know. But on the flip side of that, they brought a Honda Civic Sport Touring, and so Sam, you've talked really kindly about the Honda Civic Sport and how it really is a good handling GTI alternative, and we've talked about the looks, which are not everybody's cup of tea, but wow, it really, and in touring, so touring is the sort of like luxurious trim, but sport touring, like, it really does compete pretty dead on with the GTI. It's a different thing.
It's not quite as powerful as a GTI. It's only 180 horsepower,
but it goes down the road really solid, and it handles really well. Mm-hmm. I was really impressed with it. You could hustle the crap out of it, and it just wanted more, which, so to the point where when I'm questioning my judgment and the car's like, yeah, let's do this. That's good. That is a good chassis. I
think that's the one that I got. I almost got my speeding ticket in.
Yeah, probably. It's got the center exit exhaust, and so it's not quite it's not as upright as the GTI. So the hatch area is not as useful, but it's still not, it's not a coupe, so it's a good car.
It's got plenty of space back there, though. I mean, you're right. The slope of the rear hatch, because it's kind of notched in the middle, so there's a vertical part and then a sloping part there. You still have 25 cubic feet of cargo space behind the rear seats with the rear seats folded up.
With the seats up, like in use.
With seats up, there's 25 cubic feet, because it's a pretty deep well in there. And so there's actually a surprising amount of space back there.
Wow, that's bigger than it looks.
Yeah, no, I mean, when we got rid of the Jetta wagon and replaced it with the Civic, I went and I checked the measurements, and there was actually pretty much as much space in this thing as there was in the Jetta wagon.
Wow. Just, not with the roof line, right? But just sort of square. That's impressive. That's good. It's as a driver's car, I liked it quite a bit. I still hate their infotainment. It's
fair enough.
It's like pokey slow. Like it makes you wait for stuff. And I don't think that's acceptable at all. Like, especially when they've got functions like the climate, you got to hit the climate button and then it brings it up in the screen. And like, again, there's a lag. Like it makes you wait. Like, no, that's bullshit. That should come right up. And so Honda, they're getting better.
There's knobs there to just twist, to change the temperature.
Yeah, but the fan might have been on a rocker. I forget exactly what it's been a couple of days, but there was some, especially the air direction and stuff. Like it made you wait. And there were other things like just jumping. When you start it up, it takes a little while to get through its stuff. It's not responsive right away. Almost like it has to boot up for a minute or two. Honda's getting better, but they're still they're not quite there with infotainment.
Their infotainment systems in Honda and Acura are just the worst.
The audio systems, the part of it is usually pretty good, especially in Acura.
Oh, sure.
But
and especially, but the interface is just brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
So get to it, guys, because the rest of the car is pretty brilliant. It really...
Exactly.
And the steering was a little dead, too. But, it was weighted well and stuff. I just wanted more feedback. But, really, really good car. And it makes me, in my imaginary purchase decision, it's hard to pick now between that and the GTI. The GTI, like you said, is more powerful. But the Honda felt really, really good to drive. And you could daily it again. So it has that charm like the GTI. Like it can be your all-purpose car and still be fun.
Yeah, I mean, when we bought ours, we took a look at the Sport. In fact, I had a Sport press car, the base level Sport, just about 2 months before we got ours. And the thing with the Sport, the reason why we didn't go with the Sport or the Sport Touring, because you have the Sport, which is based on the base LX Civic, but with the slightly more power, and it has the base audio system. It doesn't have the touchscreen audio system, and it doesn't. It's missing some of the options. And then you have the Sport Touring, which is the high end version that has the leather seats and everything. Both of them are on 18-inch wheels, and frankly, we didn't want one with 18-inch wheels. We went with an EX, which is the mid-level trim, because it's still on 17-inch wheels, because we wanted that little bit of extra sidewall height, which, given, the nature of potholes around here, I'll take all the sidewall we can get, for most daily driving. Yeah,
I can see that. This didn't feel harsh or bad.
Yeah, no, it's fine in that respect. It's just, when you hit those potholes or those big frost heaves, you don't have a whole lot of rubber to work with there to protect those wheels.
Yeah, that got me earlier this winter. Did I tell you about the G70? Hit a pothole with the G70.
No, you didn't mention that.
$2,600 worth of damage to the G70.
Ooh.
Cracked the wheel. Did something to one of the control arms. Yeah.
Oh.
Took it out of service for the next guy. Screwed the next guy who was supposed to get it. Which
I'm trying to remember if I didn't get that car.
I didn't mean to. It was at night. I remember hitting just when they make the dash shake. Like that's a good pothole. And then I got to work the next day, and it was swap day. So they were coming to swap the car, and I'm looking it over, and I see the crack in the wheel, and I'm just like, ooh, I should tell them about that. Like there's a piece missing.
Ooh, that's never a good thing.
And so I was like, yeah, you guys should get that looked at. You'll make it back. Take it easy. There's no TPMS light or anything. It didn't spring an air leak, but yeah. So I feel you on the wanting the sidewall.
Yeah.
I like having rubber between the wheels and the road. It helps.
Yeah, depending on where you live, it may be less of an issue to, if you live in northern climes, you may want to forego the Sport and go for one of the other trims.
Yeah, I think overall every Civic is going to feel pretty good to drive.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, that's my glowing report. And from there, we burned an hour on cars, so we should probably talk about like new stuff.
Okay.
So,
go
ahead.
Well, I want to mention as we jump into news, because just by coincidence, this just popped up on my feed. The Honda Odyssey is being recalled.
those are, I saw that earlier. That's newer ones. So
yeah, it's the newer one, but it's a 2018 to 2020 model years. But if you have one, particularly the EXL Touring and Elite minivans, they are under recall.
What are they under recall for?
A fire hazard, electrical fire hazard. Yeah, the wire harness for the third row accessory power outlet can get pinched between the unibody and rear trim panel, NHTSA says.
Yeah, that's probably important. You know what, though? If it burns to the ground, it gives you an opportunity to get a new car.
Well, there's been 3 fires and no reported injuries.
Yeah, no, that's actually, car fires are no joke. They go really quick.
So start looking, March 16th is when the notice will go out by mail, because that's efficient.
Because it's required.
So
you can't assume that everyone has email.
I know. I understand that it's required.
Yeah, but no, like with the recall, what happens is they send the thing out, and like there are people who are just never going to take any action, and they're just, no matter how many notices they get in the mail, like it goes in the little file. And they're like, yeah, it's under recall. And then they'll take it to the dealer, and the dealer will say, it's under recall, but we don't have the parts. So that always helps too.
Well, you know what's most fun is when you keep getting recall notices for a car that you don't own anymore.
That's when they bought somebody's mailing list. And they haven't updated it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not that. It's, for recalls, they actually get the information from
the DMVs,
from the DMVs, so they get your address and everything. But the problem is, the car in question was the car I bought from my younger kid who had moved to Oregon with the car, and I had transferred ownership to her, and she, that car has now been retired completely. It's it was traded in on something else. And the state of Michigan just it still has it in their records. And I'm in no particular mood to go down to the Secretary of State's office and try to deal with it.
Can't imagine why.
I'll just toss the recall cards in the recycling.
I think the Secretary of State probably has better things to do anyway than help your situation, help you not get postcards.
Yeah.
No, but recalls are serious. Tesla actually also has a recall on the Model X crossovers for a power steering issue. And I don't mean to be a recall expert here, but and Ford has a recall as well. They're just all popping up.
Oh, the Ford was like
right now.
There's a couple 100,000 Explorers or something, right? Like,
yeah, and the thing with recalls, when you get a recall notice, it's almost, it's always for a safety issue. So, please, make an appointment to get your car into the dealer as soon as possible and have it addressed before it becomes a problem for you. Because, you don't want to be the victim of something going wrong like that. And the thing about recalls is it doesn't cost you anything except whatever time it takes you, out of your day to get the car.
You can go sit in the brand new cars in the dealership. You can drink their free coffee and take a whole pile full of brochures home if they still do. That's what I used to do. I used to get the brochures when the car would go in for service. I had a nice collection. It's good. I remember sitting in
I just take my laptop and sit in the waiting room.
That's right. They've got Wi-Fi. Yeah. All right.
But you're right. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail us from other news items.
That's fine. Get your stuff fixed. Jeez, don't be a hazard on the road. Nikola Badger is super interesting, except for it's another EV pickup, which I think we've had about our fill of these things. But it's a hybrid, but it's a different kind of hybrid pickup, which you said it's not new.
It's not a new concept. Right. No, it's all electric, and it is also a hybrid because it uses a combination of a battery and a hydrogen fuel cell. And for those that don't recall Nikola, they're a startup that is developing fuel cell tractor trailers, long haul Class 8 trucks, and they're powered by hydrogen fuel cells. So what they've done is they're taking their fuel cell technology and combining it with a battery in a full size pickup truck, and using the fuel cell as a range extender. So you get about 300 miles of range from the battery, and then about another 300 miles or so from the hydrogen, being converted into electricity in the fuel cell. And this is not an entirely new concept. In fact, I first drove a vehicle that had a very similar type of setup back in February of 2007. Ford had prototype Edge that they called the Edge High Series. In fact, the month before that at the Detroit Auto Show, they showed a concept called the Airstream, which was a minivan concept that, at least on the spec sheet, as concepts go, because concepts never actually match what they claim. But it was supposed to have had this same plug-in hybrid fuel cell powertrain, but what they ended up doing was actually putting that into the Edge. And the plan was they were actually going to build a fleet of about 100 of these for testing. But by early 2008, as things were starting to go downhill in the economy, Ford decided to abandon that project. But I did, when I was writing for Autoblog, I actually did have an opportunity to drive the one prototype they had. Actually, they had a couple of prototypes. I drove one of them. Went over to visit one of their engineering facilities in Dearborn, and it actually works pretty well, because the cool thing about it, is using the fuel cell as a range extender that way. Fuel cells, like a lot of other propulsion systems, are a lot more efficient when they operate in a steady state mode instead of transient mode. So if you just have a pure fuel cell vehicle, the fuel cell has to crank out more or less power to, just like an engine, depending on how hard you get on the accelerator pedal. If you can have the fuel cell, if you can have your main power coming from the battery and have the fuel cell operating in a steady state mode, just recharging the battery all the time, then it can be much more efficient. And you still have completely zero emissions, but you're also fully electric, and you can have more range, so you can have a smaller battery and a smaller fuel cell.
I like the idea. I actually was scratching my head about it, trying to figure out why it hasn't had more applications, because that's the issue, right? With an EV is the range and the recharging. The problem you're going to run into here is I guess how fast the fuel cell can put energy back into the battery, and then B, where the hell are you going to refuel it?
Well, the first part is not really a problem so much. I mean, it can, you can size the fuel cell, for whatever output you need, so you can definitely keep up with the battery. The refueling, hydrogen refueling, is the real issue. There's about 40 hydrogen stations in California now, and that's about the only place we're going to find any hydrogen stations. I think there's a few opening up in the Northeast sometime this year, but right now you're basically stuck in California.
Yeah, and that's the issue. Like, they're going to make this thing work. It already works. Are they just far enough behind the eight ball, though, that their charging infrastructure is going to be built out? They're building charging infrastructure. Nobody's talking about hydrogen infrastructure except for maybe Lind or Airgas. which I think there's
there's a few other companies, and Toyota and Honda and Hyundai have actually made some investments in companies like I forget the name of the company now, the First Energy, I think, in California, that operates a lot of the hydrogen stations there. It's I think where we're actually going to start seeing more of it, where hydrogen fuel cells are more likely to have applications early on in the coming years, is in some of these trucking applications. Where you've got vehicles. Toyota, for example, is testing some tractor trailers at the port of Long Beach powered by fuel cells. And they're currently building up a new fleet of next generation ones with Kenworth, I think, building 10 of those. Those are trucks that return to base every night. So they only need one hydrogen filling station to support that fleet. And then for the Nikola trucks, what they're doing is they're building out a network of hydrogen fueling stations across a bunch of the major interstates across the U.S. For transcontinental trips. And they're actually going to be generating the hydrogen on site from electrolysis and using solar or wind power to generate the hydrogen on site at those stations.
Wow, that sentence ended so much better than I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be they're going to generate the hydrogen from natural gas, which
no. I mean that's where most hydrogen comes from right now, but they're moving away from that towards what they call green hydrogen. So generating it from water with renewable electricity.
Good for them. That's fantastic.
And for bigger, heavier vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell systems actually make more sense. It's to get comparable amount of range and performance. It ends up being a lot lighter than for the batteries that you need for the same kind of performance and capability.
And also refueling. Is significantly shorter as well.
Yeah. You can refuel a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle in about the same amount of time it takes to fill a gas tank. Whereas, refilling, charging up the batteries in a truck. Tesla, for their Semi has claimed that you'll be able to charge it to 80% in 30 minutes, for their Semi. But, that's going to take like a 1 megawatt charger.
Yeah.
And, so that's going to require some pretty heavy duty cooling, some pretty big cables.
Just going to brown out the grid.
Yeah. Minor details.
Whatever. 1 megawatt. Is this company, speaking of Tesla though, like is Nikola more serious, less vaporware than because I don't take the Tesla truck seriously at all. I think it's just nonsense.
Yeah. I think, I don't know about, the Badger. We'll see, if they can actually get that to market. Their trucks, their heavy duty trucks, I think, those are definitely serious. They've got some pretty serious investment. They've got a partnership, especially with Bosch. They're developing all the electric propulsion stuff. And they're working on getting those trucks into the marketplace, and they've gotten a lot of orders for them from a bunch of big companies, big fleet operators. So I think that they've got a pretty decent chance of, at least getting to market and having some degree of success on their heavy duty trucks. Yeah. And we'll see what happens with the pickup.
Well, and they say they're partnering with an OEM for the pickup. They won't say who, but they say that.
There was a report yesterday on InsideEVs.com that it might be FCA. So we'll see.
That'd be good for FCA.
And the thing looks really cool.
It does.
The Nikola Badger. I just love the fact that they used Nikola as the first,
right?
The Tesla thing. That's hilarious.
And it's the Badger. The Honey Badger just doesn't give them.
Well, yeah. But no, it looks really cool though. I mean, it looks like the kind of truck that it's supposed to look like. I don't know if it has shatterproof windshield, windows or not. And
neither does the Tesla side.
And my little fingers are going with that.
You need the vanity plates that say Hindenburg. That's
but no, it looks cool though.
Yeah,
for sure.
Is there? What are the combustion byproducts of hydrogen? Is it
water?
It's just water, not CO2?
Yeah. Nope.
Okay.
No,
because it's not combustion.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean,
it's oxidation.
Fuel cell. Yeah, it's just an oxidation reaction. So you're putting in oxygen and hydrogen, and you get water vapor out.
Okay. All right. I'm just trying to poke holes in it, just to be like, where could this fall down? I'm sorry. I'll stop being a journalist now. Yeah.
Well, infrastructure is the main
but the infrastructure doesn't seem like the infrastructure doesn't seem like the more difficult one. Like with EVs, the infrastructure is kind of the harder part. The fuel cell here is the harder part, just because, and it's not because the technology isn't mature. It's actually quite mature. It's the cost of it, like you said, and then just the cheaper the membrane, the cheaper the fuel cell.
And they're making a lot of progress on the cost of the fuel cell stack itself. That has come down substantially, and it's continuing to come down with each new generation of these things. They're working out the manufacturing processes so they don't require as much of the catalyst material, platinum and palladium in there that they use for catalysts, and designing the fuel cell stacks for mass production instead of for one-off builds.
Yeah. That's great. That's platinum and palladium, because those don't get cut out of cars at parked at places. Like, that's great. So it's going to be like a rash of fuel cell thefts.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be a little more challenging to pull this fuel cell stack out than to pull out a catalytic.
Never stopped anyone with a saw. Wait, no, it's funny. It's just, yeah. I didn't realize it was the same catalyst material. That's interesting. Yeah. So let's stay with new stuff. You went to the Faurecia Innovation Day?
Faurecia, yeah, something like that.
Faurecia, throw that in.
Yeah. Yeah.
You went to Innovation Day.
Yeah, they had an Innovation Day, and actually one of the things that they're working on is also fuel cell systems, both the hydrogen storage tanks and their own fuel cell stack design. But I don't want to get into that right now. But what they did show a couple of interesting things. One was their e-mirror system, which is in production now in Japan on the Lexus ES in the Japanese market. Can't get it here yet because it's not legal here. But they showed some interesting little additions to that compared to what we've previously seen on the Audi e-tron, the European spec Audi e-tron. Because you've got the side cameras on the cameras mounted on the side of the vehicle, and then projecting onto displays on the inside of the vehicle, usually somewhere around the base of the A-pillar. And one of the things they've done on here is they've done a little augmentation. So when you're looking at the display and seeing the rear corner of your vehicle, it actually shows. It's projecting a red line going around, so you can actually see right on the road where the corner of your vehicle is. So as there's another, when there's another vehicle coming up, you can actually see where, and it'll, then for other vehicles, it'll show project lines on there, overlay lines on the display of where the corner of that vehicle is. So you can actually see where it is on the road relative to your own vehicle. And when it's a certain distance away, that'll be green. As it gets closer and closer, it transitions to orange. And when it's too close, then it goes to red. So when so this is kind of their way of incorporating blind spot monitoring into this. And they're actually integrating not just the camera, but also the rear corner radars that you use for blind spot monitoring to help, with that proximity sensing at the rear corners.
What are they doing about? Did they talk at all about how it can be difficult for your eyes to actually sort of focus on a screen versus mirror glass?
Yeah. So they did talk about that, and one of the bigger challenges is especially flickering from LED lights, and so they've got higher resolution cameras, higher frame rate cameras, and they're doing some digital filtering in there to eliminate the flickering. but also, trying to make it so that it seems more like a mirror, trying to emulate the behavior of a mirror. It's not going to be exactly the same from a focusing standpoint, but it's getting better.
Yeah. Oh, and I didn't even think about the flicker. Man, that would drive me nuts to have an LED, LCD or LED, because that's the thing. Your periphery is more actually.
I mean, if you ever point a video camera at an LED light, and look at the display, you'll see that flickering.
Yeah.
And that would be very annoying. And so they've addressed that with higher frame rates and digital filtering in there to eliminate the flickering. The NHTSA right now, has some stuff up for comment. They've opened up a comment period on things like electronic mirrors, and they're evaluating, whether to make changes in the regulations here to allow those. One of the things that they told us today was, they were testing these e-mirrors on an F-150, and what was it? Said they got 1.6% reduction in fuel economy with the e-mirrors relative to the standard mirrors on the F-150. And, that's not insignificant. Engineers, to get, 1.5% improvement in fuel economy, they go to pretty extensive lengths to get that kind of improvement.
For sure. Is that because the Audi e-tron that I drove back in December last year had very narrow, had electronic or different kinds of mirrors that are not allowed in the U.S. Is it similar to those?
Yeah, it's the same thing. The camera mirror system.
Yeah, those took a little while to get used to, for sure. But then after probably an hour of driving, it was just kind of like whatever. But they were definitely a little. It was a little tricky. But you're right. It really helps on aero, and it would be great if the regulations were homogenous, so that save money and get these kind of technologies over faster. You can either
have things that are supposed to be regulated are going to be deregulated, and the regulations that we have are going to be completely nonsensical. But at least if they do allow it in the U.S., we're going to get another half a bajillion horsepower into the F-150.
Well, and we can all agree that we're from the government and we're here to help. Yeah. So there you go.
Sorry. I'm being really jaded and old today. I'm sorry. Yeah. What's this connected wellness business that they were talking about?
Yeah, so this is another thing that they were showing. They had a couple of different interior bucks, showing off some things some interesting things they're doing with active noise cancellation. And, they had one, they had an F-150 set up, with for, an automated driving thing, where when you put it in automated mode, the steering wheel pulls away from you. But they also had it set up with the center screen that, and they had cameras on the A-pillars, to look at the occupants, look at the driver and the front passenger, and, based on, the camera's evaluation of, kind of how tall you are, where you're sitting, it could automatically adjust the seat, to give you a comfortable seating position.
I want that.
Nope.
I want that.
Nope. Leave me there.
Well, as long as you can tweak it.
You devil machine.
No, as long as you can tweak it.
one of the other things, they had.
As long as you can tweak it.
They had an infotainment system that they developed. So the center screen is actually on a pivot, so that if the front passenger wanted to watch a movie, the screen actually tilts away from the driver, so the driver can't really see it, and then the front passenger seat tilts inwards towards the screen, so you're looking head on at the screen, so you can watch a movie without distracting the driver.
Okay, but it would have to be headphones only, because if you put on a movie,
they had speakers in the headrests and in the speakers.
Oh, okay, so that's
seats.
cool.
And actually, let me rephrase that. They actually didn't have speakers at all. All of the sound in this thing was generated by actuators on various, mounted on various interior surfaces of the vehicle. it actually sounded shockingly good, considering you didn't have traditional speakers.
That's something I forget where else I saw that. And it's really clever because you don't have the typical packaging problem of a conventional speaker with the motor structure and a large magnet that you've got to package. You're creating, you're resonating the panel with a transducer. So it's a little more compact. And then, because of the magic of DSP and stuff, you can make it sound good now, like we couldn't back in the day. It just turns the whole panel into a speaker. Or it vibrates the panel and the sound radiates from it. So it's cool.
Yeah. So those kinds of like speakers, those like specific speakers, the first time I saw them was actually in Turin, Italy, at the National Museum of Cinema. And they have this huge open space, and they've got like loungers, and everybody can watch their own movie in them. Even in this open space.
And that's what they've done
so
here.
Cool.
Yeah. And so they demonstrated that, so you basically get your own little personal bubble of sound around you. And, it doesn't really intrude on other people. So everybody in the vehicle can be watching something different or watching the same thing.
That's so
or
cool.
listening to different things. And then taking that a step further, this connected wellness idea, they actually had a buck with pressure transducers mounted in the footwell, and you could sit back in the seat, put your feet down, and then go have it do some exercises. You guide you through some exercises.
Is there a foot massager in there? Because don't toy with me.
There was no foot massager in this one, but it did have a massaging seat. So at the end of your exercise session, the seat would go through a full body massage, which was really nice. But so you had these pressure transducers on the floor, and so it had me go through, I press down on it with the balls of my feet, to see, you could set, how much pressure you wanted, like how much of a workout you wanted. And then it would guide you through on the screen, again, the screen that tilts towards you. So, it would tell you, you would see, left foot, right foot, press down, release, press your heels and so on. So you could do a bunch of different exercises. I mean, it's kind of goofy, but it's something that, could be interesting, for long road trips.
Yeah, and it's easy to make fun of it in some ways, but I think the two places where people probably spend the most time are their bed and their car. Maybe their desk at work, but really, like their bed, you spend an awful lot of hours in those two places. So some of this stuff is goofy, like you said, but some of it may surprisingly find an application. I don't know.
Well, and there's actually multiple applications, because also if you think about, longer plane rides, for instance, or long haul plane rides, these are things that are actually really serious for like deep vein thrombosis, things like that. And as we drive, if we move towards autonomous vehicles, and we do have situations where we're driving for 4, 5, 6 hours and not actually actively driving, or even if you are driving, you can get all sorts of bad things if you don't move around enough. So there actually are legitimate health reasons for these kinds of things. I just am a total sucker for a good foot massage.
Well, all you got to do is put your feet up on the firewall is going to be vibrating with sound, right? So just put your feet up on it.
Exactly.
Just put your feet up on the dash and turn up the volume.
Get yourself a subwoofer in the footwell. It's cool. Like that's where innovation comes from, is this sort of forward thinking weird stuff. So
yeah.
JD Power released their dependability study, and Genesis sort of swept all of the old line players, which was really interesting. They even beat sort of perennial favorite Lexus.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I mean, Lexus won for the last 8 years, and then Genesis, Lexus, and Buick Porsche, Toyota, Volkswagen, Lincoln, BMW, Chevy, and Ford. So, I mean, that's really, really pretty an impressive feat.
That's the only place you're going to find Buick in the top 3.
I like my little Coco. Don't make fun of her. She's very sensitive.
Okay.
But it says a lot, though. I mean, this is JD Power. They're very well respected.
This is satisfaction. Which studies?
These are problems reported. So this is
that's initial quality.
Reliability after 3 years of ownership.
Oh, it's not. So it's not initial quality. It's dependability, like we said. Yeah. Yes. So okay.
Right. Yep. And the bottom was Volvo, Jag, Chrysler, and Land Rover.
Does not surprise me at all.
Tesla was not part of the study. Well, you know, I mean, the Volvo thing is disappointing. Jag and Land Rover, it's like, yeah, okay, there's jokes about that. and Chrysler's
struggled for a while.
I know. I know they have.
And, you know, like our experience with the Chrysler vehicle has been great. I mean, the thing clicked off 130,000 miles without a problem. A couple of problems, but not like anything like major, like that would cause me to be like, oh, this is poor quality. It's just car stuff, wear items. Were they dinging the cars that were at the bottom? You know, one of the things that's sort of been a little not great about or not clear about the JD Power figures is the like infotainment systems that can be difficult to use are sort of lumped in as a quality problem when they're not really. They're a design problem, but they're not exactly like a quality problem.
Well, yeah. So
go ahead,
this is it tracks problems per 100 vehicles during a 12-month period by owners of 3-year-old vehicles. So it's subjective in some ways. So this is JD Power said these are 2017 models. They average 134 problems per 100 vehicles studied, a slight improvement over 2016. And,
you know, I think, while, yes, you know, the infotainment stuff is often a design problem, you know, it's still a functional issue for the user of the vehicle. If they can't properly use the system or reliably use the system, you know, or, you know, if it's something that causes them to go back to the dealer, you know, trying to get, you know, something fixed, even if it can't necessarily be fixed, it's still a problem. You know, and, you know, in the announcement, you know, they said that actually the in-vehicle technology was the area of greatest improvement this year. So there is progress being made on that, but it's still an issue, you know, especially with voice recognition, which should start to get significantly better now that they're going to connected voice recognition systems with natural language processing. Bluetooth is an issue, and nav systems. And, you know, again, nav systems are another area that should start to get a lot better, you know, and that'll be reflected, you know, a couple of years from now, based on the vehicles that are coming to market now. But they, you know, overall, you know, there's a lot of, you know, there's been a lot of improvement in a lot of areas. And, you know, you mentioned that Tesla was not included. And the reason why, the way JD Power does these surveys, they actually send out the surveys to vehicle owners. And they get the data from, you know, in part from the DMVs, but they have to get permission from the in some states they have to get permission from the manufacturer to share that data, and, you know, in other states they don't. But because Tesla refuses to allow JD Power access to any of the owner data, because they simply don't want to participate. My guess is because they know that their results are probably not going to be very good. They are the only manufacturer that does not participate.
No, Sam, it's because they're going to take over the auto industry and show all these old car makers how to really do it.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm sorry. Boy.
You know, so that's why you won't find Tesla listed in any of the JD Power surveys, because Tesla refuses to share that information.
It would be interesting to see what that info was. I mean, we can sort of extrapolate a little bit from anecdotes. But...
Well, you can get some of it, you know, from looking at Consumer Reports surveys, because, you know, they're not going through the manufacturer. You know, it's Consumer Reports subscribers, you know, are, you know, filling out those surveys, you know, directly. So Consumer Reports is not getting information from a DMV or anybody. It's just whoever's getting Consumer Reports magazine is getting those surveys.
That's true. And if there's one thing that Tesla owners like to talk about, it's their cars. So I'm glad that some participate in that study, because it's really instructive. It's interesting that the things that showed the greatest improvement but still cause a problem is the in-vehicle technology, and that's the stuff that has the shortest lifespan, right? The stuff that just moves more quickly than anything else in automotive tech, right? Like the tech is sort of turning over every year and a half. Really, there's sort of new stuff out there and new improvements, and car models. I mean, a redesigned car, it needs to last for what, 8 years? 4 years mid-cycle refresh, another 4 years, and then.
Well, I mean, the average age of cars is 12 years.
12, yeah. So, that's just never going to get. It'll get better. I think it's probably going to be better next time around, because more cars are offering the phone protection systems too, like CarPlay and Android Auto.
Well, that and we're also starting now to roll out over-the-air updates. For vehicles. So when there are problems, manufacturers will be able to fix those a lot more easily.
Yeah.
At least if it's a software problem.
Yeah.
And granted, manufacturers are also they've recognized that this has been a problem. And in part, one of the reasons why these systems have been a problem, is the software, but also that they've put in underpowered hardware.
Yeah, like I was complaining about the Civic system.
They've traditionally gone with the cheapest processors that they could get away with, and they're starting to put in more powerful computers to run these systems, and that'll give them more headroom to work with, and they now have the ability to do software updates. So in the coming years, that you should see that problem get alleviated quite a bit.
Yeah, I have to confess. I sort of switched to an iPhone by protest, and I got in a car. We swapped today, so I got in the car, and Apple CarPlay didn't come up right away. And I was like, "Really? You need to pair this thing and use the system with Bluetooth? Oh, what is this? It's so last century." So it was really weird, the speed at which you sort of acclimate to that, and because it's sort of a standard interface across all cars, it becomes so familiar that that's what you want to wind up using, not necessarily the in-car systems. I blew myself away with having assimilated. I didn't want to. It was in protest.
Look at you, early adopting.
I just totally late adopting. I was sort of I was astounded at myself. I was like, oh, I guess it's had an effect on my brain. Where it's that's what I was looking for, because I wanted to listen to my podcast, and it's easier to use the Apple CarPlay interface than it is to dink around with whatever embedded system is in there. So that was, I don't know. It's just interesting. That's all. I'm done now. And I think we're done too. I think we've exhausted the podcast audience attention span. So we'll follow up next week with one topic that we didn't cover. And we didn't have any correspondence this week, or have we bothered to check?
I haven't checked because we had other stuff.
Okay, we didn't have any correspondence this week.
We'll catch up on it next week. I did want to mention, looking at some of our analytics, kind of what kind of devices people are using to listen. It seems that most of you are listening on iOS devices, and most of you are using Apple Podcasts, or at least the largest chunk of you are using Apple Podcasts or Overcast, followed by Pocket Casts. So, it would help us a lot, if you haven't given us a rating in Apple Podcasts, to maybe go in and drop us a little 5-star rating and a review, because it'll hopefully help us bump us up in the rankings and help us show up for other people searching for car podcasts, and and help us get some more listeners.
I mean, people have told me that we are the best car podcast. So,
well, I know, but the people that know about us say that.
That's true. And I actually put out a call not too long ago on Twitter to say, like, who should we have on? And so we should compile that list and get some people on, because there were some really interesting suggestions that, some we can make happen more easily than others. But, somebody suggested RJ Scaringian. I think that it would be fantastic.
I'm working on that.
Hopefully that one happens, because that'd be great. I'd just love to chat about Rivian. That company fascinates me. There are a couple of other people that we're friendly with that we should figure out how to get them on. Hopefully that helps keep us interesting. sure people get tired of listening to me be like both Waldorf and Statler at the same time. So and on that note, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're young. I'll leave it at that. So thanks for listening. We'll catch everybody next week.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.